And we are, hey everybody, how are you? And I'm going live and at the same time, putting this right here on Facebook for those to see. And we are 8:36 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 5:36 p.m. In the in Oakland and the great state of California, as well as the West Coast in its entirety. And I'm proud, more beyond proud to do this because I tried to get this man on my show for how long. the legendary, and I do say the legendary John Jones. John, I'm honored to have you, my man.
And it's an honor to be on, Zenny. I appreciate it. I know it's been a long time coming, but we're here.
We are here. John is Director of Community and Political Engagement at Just Cities and with the Dellums Institute for Social Justice. He is well known for his work with the Oakland community and advocacy in a number of roles. I can't think of a better person to talk to about Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf's decision to hire former Oakland San Mateo Police Chief Susan Manheimer. And I have to add a note, something that our mutual friend John Burris told me by email. The Chronicle quoted a city official, not named, as saying that the mayor consulted with, among other people, Burris before hiring Manheimer. John Burris emailed me back and said misinformation, and said that he only said purely that he was going to, that he advised the mayor on pros and cons of each possible candidate, and recommended that someone be hired within after the 6-month interim period, from within after the 6-month interim period. I wanted the mayor to hire Lerone Armstrong. He wanted the job. He told me that via LinkedIn. I'm going to shut up now. I want to hear, John, what do you think about all this? And where are we now with Oakland and our police situation?
Thank you, Zenny. I definitely want to start with what you just shared, because I also read that same article and it had me puzzled. You know, as someone who's known John Burris, I had a hard time believing that he was just fully on board the way that the article shared it. So it's good to hear that he wasn't, and I'm glad that that's being clarified.
Yeah,
because he knows, more than most of us what's really at stake here. Yeah. And I do have a few points I think is so important to share. I actually share a lot of this through a Facebook post. I want to start with this. When we look at OPD, the issues with OPD goes back decades, right, to the 1960s. And it's really rooted in their egregious treatment of Black residents. It starts there. Mm-hmm. And this is why this hiring of Manheimer, who I don't know, I never met her, so I can't really comment about her directly or personally, as much as sharing that she, in a lot of ways, presents the same challenges and concerns that the former chief Ann Kirkpatrick presented. Mm-hmm. Being a middle-aged white woman from a town with a relatively small Black population, not being in a position to understand the city of Oakland, the complexities of Oakland, right, politically as well as demographically. Mm-hmm. My second thing is really OPD also has a poor track record with its treatments of Black officers. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting when Kirkpatrick was fired and the media was talking about how the morale of what they did not talk about was the fact that the Black Police Officer Association penned a letter to the mayor, then city administrator Sabrina Landreth, as well as the former chief, outlining their conditions, their concerns, right? Mm-hmm. And they were specifying situations of blatant racism that relates to how Black officers were disciplined, as well as the inability of Black officers to be promoted. Now, this is clearly important because this is now the 5th police chief under the watch of Mayor Libby Schaaf. And it's interesting that she has failed to produce a viable Black candidate.
Yeah.
And it's not that they don't exist. We know it. Danielle Outlaw spent 19 years on the force. By all sources that I've heard and came across, was a very competent officer who ended up taking the position of chief in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing is true for Deputy Chief Armstrong, right? And that leads to my third point. If we're serious about addressing the issues with OPD, it's going to require a hire that's internal. Someone that comes from within the department who understands not only the complexities I named before, right? Mm-hmm. The need for authentic community engagement, the history of the department, but also someone on the inside who understands the internal culture of that department. Mm-hmm. Because we know that there has been lots of cover-ups that has taken place within the department itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we go back to the Celeste Glott situation, the reason why it really hit as hard as it did was the fact that an officer who committed suicide left a note. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, the department was very invested in the cover-up. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to touch on Manheimer from what I do know. Mm-hmm. This is very important. I think this should be in part of the investigation. Mm-hmm. So my understanding is she was both lieutenant and captain in the Tenderloin district in San Francisco when she was on SFPD. Mm-hmm. Now, my personal experience, as well as what I know firsthand, there was rampant police brutality taking place in the Tenderloin in the late 90s and the year 2000. I experienced it myself. I had a police officer playing drugs on me, got arrested. The crime lab tested the product that the officer said that he found on me, found out it was wax. District attorney dropped the charges because it's not against the law to possess wax. They refiled on me and tampered with the evidence and somehow produced a substance that was tested to be crack. And I'm trying to figure out how is it that they claim they found something on me, it was tested, it was proven to not be illegal substance, and then somehow tamper with that. So some years later, there was a movement to throw out a lot of these convictions in San Francisco because they captain and lieutenant. Yes.
Hey, John, can you repeat that point? Because you said there was a movement too, and it cut out for a second. I want people to hear that. It was just some sort of technical perturbation, but can you repeat that, please?
Yes. So about 10 years ago or so, there was a move by Jeff Adachi, may he rest in peace,
yes,
Public Defender's Office, who investigated the allegations of corruption that took place within the crime lab. And this was all documented. So they know that there was a person who worked on the crime lab, within the crime lab who was tampering with evidence. But to be clear, this was also going on through police officers. So a lot of convictions got thrown out. So my concern is because this happened under her watch as well, when she was both captain and then eventually lieutenant of the Tenderloin district. Was she aware of these things? What was her response to it? Because it happened once again under her watch. And I think it's very important, Zenny, for your viewers to understand that those same allegations is what also led to the reason why OPD is under federal oversight, because we had those 4 officers who were engaged in similar activities, planting drugs on Black residents in West Oakland, as well as brutalizing them.
Can you tell people, and I want people to hear this as well, how we got to a point where we have the most powerful civilian police commission in the United States, if not the world?
Good question, because once again, in between the former Chief Kirkpatrick as well as OPD itself, they hope and wish that those pages in history were stuck together. So as I shared before, OPD has a long outstanding history of abuse toward its residents, specifically Black residents. I mean, I personally experienced it myself coming of age in East Oakland during the 1980s. I've also experienced it by having 2 of my childhood friends murdered by OPD officers. So what's happening right now, currently, the OPD is under federal oversight because it was part of a lawsuit. Some of the residents who were brutalized by OPD sued the department. And the result of that was an agreement that the department would be tasked with what they call these 50 agreements, part of the negotiated settlement agreement. There were a list of 50 tasks that the OPD was responsible for attaining. And as of right now, they have not covered all of them. In the beginning, this was supposed to have been a 5-year process, meaning this should have been done by 2008. It didn't happen. In fact, under Mayor Schaaf's watch, they actually went backwards on 3. The Federal Monitor reopened 3 of these tasks because evidence was released that showed that the department was still continuing to underreport use of force. They were still disproportionately stopping Black residents at a time where 1/3 of the black population in Oakland has left. There's essentially fewer black people in Oakland today. So if you follow that logic, you should be stopping fewer black folks.
Right.
In fact, the overall percentage actually increased, with the department being disingenuous as usual, lied. They distorted the facts by saying they stopped less black residents. Now, it's true that overall they engaged in fewer stops, but if you look at it in terms of percentage, the percentage of those stops that were black residents actually increased over a 2-year period. So they're still continuing the same pattern of harassment. And it's even more important for folks to understand that as a result of these stops, black residents were less likely to emerge with a traffic ticket or any contraband, like a weapon or drugs being found. Conversely, with the percentage of white residents who were stopped, they had a higher percentage of retrieving contraband. So it's very interesting right there.
My God. I want to add something to what you were talking about, something that happened to me in 2006. I'd come from, and I've told this story before. In fact, I told it to Jeff Adachi on video a few years ago, I believe in 2012. But I was stopped. What happened was I was coming back from the Balboa Cafe across the bridge, which happened to be owned by our governor. And a friend of mine since 98, Governor Newsom. And anyway, there was a guy tailgating me. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I saw a CHP patrol officer in the middle of the bridge. And I went to deliberately get in front of that police car to get the person tailing me. I'm signaling to the cops, go after. They don't. So then we go to, when we come off the bridge, next thing I know, they're doing their lights and they stop me. And I was trying to tell them what happened. And then I realized, he says, we're going to be fine. And we're just going to breathalyze you. And then he puts my hands over my head. And I'm thinking, they're actually going to arrest me. They didn't do anything that I said to them. They let the guy that tailgated me go by me at 80 miles per hour because I had slowed to 62. And yet they claimed I was, speeding, which was, 55 was the limit, but everybody was speeding more than me. And so because I'm that way, teals started to roll because I couldn't believe what was happening. And the highway patrol officer said, "Oh, you're going to do that, huh?" And he body slammed me on the hood of his squad car with my hands over my head. I could do nothing. At that point, when my body made contact with the car, I had quite literally, for all practical purposes, left my body because I couldn't believe it was happening. So I wound up at Santa Rita jail thinking, oh, it's a drunk tank. I'll be out here in 4 hours because I'm not drunk. They said I was over the limit, but Bill Dubois, who's my friend to this day, had later called the same officer at the court twice to William Allen Courthouse, never showed up, okay? So they dropped what I had to a wet reckless. I wanted dismissed and Jeff told me get it expunged. But my point is that I discovered during that the Highway Patrol had been the focus of a study in 2005, which noted that they disproportionately stopped Black and Latino persons coming across the bridge, And so my point is that what we're talking about with Oakland seems to me to be a systemic problem that elected officials have allowed to go unaddressed. Am I wrong, John?
Oh, you definitely are not wrong at all. I mean, as I was sharing, this goes back decades.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, where we're seeing the response to the former chief being fired. But all of a sudden, there are some people, including a council member, who rather focus on the federal monitor as opposed to focusing on why there's even a federal monitor to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
This department's been out of control for the longest time. And if we look at it from the impact on Black residents, to me, the picture is clear. See, anytime that it is alleged that Black people commit disproportionately a majority of the crimes, then the focus becomes on harassing Black folks to paint a picture that we're the ones committing the majority of the crimes in Oakland, which is not true. And in fact, to the point of the stop data, right? Who is being pulled over? I, several weeks ago, recorded a video of the sideshow because I wanted people to see firsthand who exactly is involved in these sideshows. And to be clear, I did not see a single black driver. So at the end of the day, the facts is not meeting the narrative that's being presented by the department. It's just more deflection, more of a small screen. And to your point, it's larger than the department. It really falls upon the mayor and the city administrator. These are the two that's responsible for keeping OPD in compliance. And they have failed miserably over the last 5 years, for sure.
Hey, can you take us through, we're on with John Jones, folks. Can you take us through, from your perspective, what happened? How did the relationship between now former Oakland Police Chief Ann Kirkpatrick and the Oakland African-American community and the police commission deteriorate over time?
Sure. So if we start from the beginning, so when the former chief was given the job, this is roughly, she signed a contract with December 2016. So this is right after Measure LL passed, which 83% of the voters voted for Measure LL, which, among other things, created the police commission, right? It was a response to the fact that the department has been out of compliance for the longest time. So she gets on board, and I'm not quite sure in terms of communication that the mayor shared with her that the police commission also. So it's from day one, and as someone, I've been attending the police commission since its inception, there has been clear, visible disrespect that the former chief shown towards the police commission. I don't know if the idea of having a civilian body having authority over her was repulsive to her, but it was clear the disrespect was there. It was a lack of transparency, in some cases, a lack of honesty. And it was interesting how this battle devolved to a place to where the former chief is now isolating one member of that police commission as being solely responsible for her firing, as if it was a personal vendetta. Now, this is what your viewers, I really hope they understand this part. This was so just curious about this whole thing, as well as obviously being frustrating. Okay, so if the former chief feels like this one police commissioner in particular had a personal vendetta against her, that's one thing. But what she is failing to share is that, first of all, the decision by the police commission to fire her was unanimous. So this wasn't just one person who had the power to fire her. It was unanimous from that body. Number two, and really most importantly, the mayor also agreed to fire her. So she's labeling this as if there's one person on the police commission with a grudge. It's not true. And the fact that this is a black woman who is vocal, who is very passionate as a mother of black sons in Oakland, want to ensure their safety, she was exercising her role in due diligence as a police commissioner. And here's the last piece of this, Denny, that's really just shows how out of touch this former chief is. And keep in mind, she is someone who I've met with in meetings. I've actually had private conversations with her. And I actually liked her as a person. And I was very disappointed in her reaction to this. I shouldn't say surprised, but disappointed. I want to be clear. I do have, I have hope for people until they show who they are.
Absolutely, yeah.
She goes out. Who did she hire as her spokesperson? She hired the same person who represented Wedgwood Properties Against Mom for Housing, an organizing effort led by black women in Oakland. So once again, it shows how out of touch that she is with the black community. She could have hired anyone to represent her interests. The mere fact she went with the same person who was seen as being so controversial to so many black people in Oakland, to me, it just further cemented the reality that she was not the person for the job.
Well, actually, in full disclosure, Sam Singer's a longtime friend, so I don't rubber stamp everything Sam does. We have our arguments, but well, there you go. I mean, I just want to get that out there for anybody who might say, "Hey, Zinni is not telling the truth." I know my thing is I know a lot of people who have at points cross purposes with other friends of mine, and such leads my life. But I want to get that. I want to make that known. So I just don't want anybody.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
No problem. And to be clear, like I say, in this instance, it's not so much a matter. This is not a reflection of Sam Singer himself as much as the chief, because once again, as the former head of a department that had a notoriously adverse relationship with the Black community, at least show that you're sympathetic, or not even sympathetic. Just show that you are aware of what's happening. Right. I'm saying she could have hired anybody, right? We're talking about the chief in particular on this issue. So it just shows that, as she was saying, that her part of her job was repairing police community relationships. By making that move, it shows that she's out of touch with the same community that she claimed that she was building a relationship with.
Yep. And what bothers me, and I want you to help me with this, is if a person's interested in getting employment someplace else, isn't that the last thing to do?
You would think.
Just,
right? You would think.
Just asking. What bothers me on top of everything else, and John Jones, I want to make one thing clear for people who may be unfamiliar with my format. My job is to make sure that my guest is speaking far more than I am. So this is Mr. Jones' platform. And he has a lot of valuable personal experience in Oakland that I think everyone needs to hear more than once outside the confines of Mark Zuckerberg's platform. At any rate, I think Oakland has had 9 white male and female police chiefs in the 21st century versus just 3 that are Black. We started with the data, I called them Data Meister, who Jerry Brown brought in, Richard Word. And then we went from Richard Word to Wayne Tucker. And I want to make a special note. Between Wayne Tucker and Ann Kirkpatrick later, both were said to have excellent credentials with the community. They should be able to work with it. When they were both ousted, they were ousted for the same reason. Wayne Tucker was ousted, some would say, because of how he handled Chauncey Bailey murder, rest in peace. But then Oakland District 1 council member specifically said, and this was in 2007 when she said it, specifically said that the reason was that we needed to find a police chief who would, quote, who could communicate with the urban, who is better able to work in urban communities. Translation, work with Black folks. So here we are again, perpetuating the same problem again and again and again. John, why? What's going on that we don't use that secret sauce that the mayor always talks about exists? It's like it's just in name only now.
Exactly. To me, I'll say 2 things. The first one is even quicker to share. I always share that transformation can only occur from close proximity. So we have a dynamic to where the decision makers, as it relates to OPD, it's like it's too much. It's an insular circle, right? If we look at the available pool for folks for this position of chief, it's always limited to the same type of people, because typically the person who makes that appointment does not open themselves up to a wider community. I mean, we're seeing this now with Manheimer coming on. It's the same thing. But the second piece is probably larger. And I want to start with Jerry Brown when he was mayor, because that's when OPD first became under federal oversight. At that time, Jerry Brown, and I know the previous mayor, Elihu Harris, talked about this, but Jerry Brown was the driving force behind it. The 10K plan, right? He was very explicit. He wanted to bring 10,000 affluent white people into downtown Oakland. That was his focus. And there was a number of things that happened as a result of that. The first is, and I've heard this from officers, there was a directive given from him as mayor to the department, because the closest community to downtown Oakland is West Oakland, a historically predominantly Black community. Go in there and clean it up by any means necessary.
Yep.
We've heard that before. Whether it's Bloomberg stop and frisk, we know the same lingo, right? The phrases might change, but the outcome is the same. It always ends up in Black people being harassed.
Yep.
That was the first piece of it. The second piece of it relates to OUSD, our school system. because OUSD is the second largest holder of public land. So it's not an accident that that school district has been failing and failing miserably, because Jerry Brown also instituted some of the first charter schools here in Oakland.
Sure
right?
Yep.
So when we look at these dynamics play out, and, you know, of course, after Jerry Brown's tenure, there was a recession in 2008. And it kind of like set the stage, like a perfect storm, right? So by the time Libby Schaaf got elected, Oakland was ripe for a takeover. And we're seeing this play out. That's why it's not an accident when we look at it in terms of just sheer demographics. There's only one demographic in Oakland that has actually reduced its population. That's Black residents. And it's not an accident that it's, once again, Black residents who continue to bear the brunt of police brutality in Oakland. It's not an accident. And it's not an accident that we're seeing a lack of Black folks as chiefs of that department. Right? And I want to couple that with the fact that, once again, here's an opportunity for the mayor to take some time, some thoughtful consideration, some time for reflection, because it's the fifth chief on her watch. That means she bears some responsibility in this. For some strange reason, she's rushing to a decision, bringing in an outsider who doesn't know anything about this. Once again, Manheimer in particular, who's another person who's quote unquote retired, right? You're bringing in someone who lacks the knowledge, who lacks the understanding of these issues, and most importantly, do not look like the community most impacted by this. So this hiring is not going to instill any sense of faith or confidence. But to your question, I think the larger point is to do that. It's not intended to reform the department. It is not intended to repair or hope to establish any real relationship between the community and the department.
Hey, if I may, John, can you repeat that again? Because there was a slight perturbation again. I don't know why that's happening, but can you repeat that last point again about the last minute of your comment?
Oh, sure. Long story short, when we look at this recent hiring, what it does for me, it shows that there is no real interest on the part of the mayor to actually get OPD into compliance. There is no real interest in repairing the severely damaged relationship between the Black community specifically in the department, because there's this continuous effort to always hire outside the community, right? Outside the city of Oakland, outside the department, and most importantly, hiring folks who not only don't look like those who are the most marginalized, but really come from backgrounds to where they're ill-equipped to even deal with that reality.
Hey, by the way, I want to throw in a little point of information. I worked on the 10K project when I was transferred by Elihu Harris and city manager, then Robert Bob, to the position of economic consultant. And at the time, we had redevelopment law that was originally implemented in '68. It, by law, said that the city of Oakland had to set aside 20% of its redevelopment revenue for affordable housing. Under that law, we were very comfortable that we were going to have affordable housing built in addition to market rate housing. And we did in a number of cases. That was actually quite nice. But then when Jerry Brown became governor, he turned around and cut redevelopment. In fact, went as far as all the way to the Supreme Court to have that done. Then it was determined that he didn't really need to do that to save $1 billion. I mean, if you remember, we went from being in billions in deficit to billions in surplus during his tenure. You have to point that out. But he didn't have to kill redevelopment. And what I find particularly bothersome, I love your comment on, is that first of all, if we had maintained redevelopment from 2011 when it was cut to present day, we would have captured a record amount of affordable housing funds because of the dramatic growth that we had in people building in Oakland, not just market rate housing, but offices and everything else. You know what's been going on around here. And yet there's been no effort among any elected official to bring back redevelopment, recognizing that there's an error. All I ever hear, as I did from one elected official a couple of nights ago, is, Zenny, we don't have redevelopment, when SB 628 by Jim Beal, which was like the offshoot redevelopment in 2015, was signed into law by jury, has never been implemented in Oakland. I've told mayor after council member about it. Nothing. What does it do? It allows for the use of redevelopment funds for affordable housing. And then I don't know if you know this, John, but we have the A's Stadium and Howard Terminal. That redevelopment project there will produce $1.4 billion in monies and will allow the construction of affordable housing throughout Oakland, but they don't tell anybody that. Anyway, I just want your comment on these developments.
Yeah, the A's one in particular has been one that, I mean, I've been vocal in my position on it. I feel like at this time of this housing crisis that no government should sell its property. I think public land should belong to the people. Because just as this current crisis, for the most part, was unanticipated, we don't know decades from now what crisis that might fall upon us. And, you know, once you dispose of something, it's no longer yours. You know, and I have other thoughts about the A's as well that, you know, some I'll share, some I won't. But I would say this, if we just look at just the current makeup of the city, you know, the 20,000 plus market rate units that have been developed, completed, and or continue to be under construction, for those that's completed, many of them sit vacant. You know, there was the number of deeply affordable housing units that was supposed to be created, that number has fallen short. We know that a majority of people in Oakland are renters, and the median income of renters are roughly $40,000 a year. At a time where folks making $100,000 are considered to be makes up that's going on. And I think really, as we talk about these issues, whether it's the A's, whether it's, you know, development, even OPD, a lot of this is being informed, Benny, in my opinion, and perspective from the fact that there's a lack of historical memory in this town because of gentrification. There's so many new people here that they wasn't here, so they don't know about these issues. They only know about what they're seeing and reading. And it's interesting how the certain media publications and outlets, how they choose to cover these issues. If I can even say cover, because honestly, a lot of them are failing at this. They're not sharing the truth. So it's kind of like it's perpetuating this false ideas about what's actually happening in Oakland. That's why I'm grateful for platforms like yours. You know, as we were talking about the 10K plan, you know, you have that historical context and memory, which is so important because so many people don't have it.
That's true.
And I always say, you don't know what you don't know.
That's
why I would tell people, educate and research. I mean, the internet can be used for many wonderful things.
Hey, I got to ask you, were you shocked over the role the mayor played in the ouster of Kirkpatrick? Because I was told the day before it was officially announced that she had already done it, even before it reached the commission. And I can't say who told me. This person personally called me and said, you know, I'm telling you, this has gone down. You need to report this.
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't surprised at all. And I'll share why quickly. The first thing is it was necessary. Or I mean by necessary, it's not even so much about how the former chief showed up, but necessary in terms of self-interest for the mayor. I mean, because this is what would have happened. So the police commission also under Measure LL had the power to fire the chief with just cause. And under just cause, that meant they would have had to detail their reasons for doing so, which would have not bode well for the mayor. So it was much easier and convenient for her to go along with that, right? And to frame it as, well, this is what citizen-driven body said, I am in agreement. It kind of let her off the hook somewhat, but she bears far more responsibility. For her to fight that, it really would have put her in a bad light. And this is for reason number two. So we know that this is her second term. So under the charter, she cannot run for mayor again. So this is essentially, you know, she's a lame duck mayor at this point. But it's clear that she has further political aspirations. Now, I'm hearing rumors. I'm not going to speak on that now, but I'm hearing rumors of where she wants to land next.
Where? So spill it. Give us a hint.
Well, there's rumor. Okay, I'll share it. Keep in mind, this is a rumor. I don't like spreading rumors so I can substantiate it. But the rumor is she got her eyes on a certain seat in the East Bay. Put it that way.
You know, like assembly.
Assembly district, yes.
Huh.
So, you know.
So you got Rob Bonta and Buffy Wicks, right?
Well, just saying.
Interesting.
Just saying. So clearly, just really just observing, you know, her interactions on Twitter, for example, how she's been engaging her. I won't even call it a Twitter beef with Donald Trump because I think it's a low bar to oppose anything he does. Right? Doesn't really require any intelligence. I'm not going to give anybody any points for that. But it seemed like she was setting herself up for something higher and outside of Oakland.
But when you present that, you make it sound like a fait accompli that she's going to get elected.
Yes, and I would share this. When we look at these issues in policing in Oakland, and really just specifically to the mayor's tenure, it's a combination of, I'm going to call it this, it's a combination of arrogance and ignorance. I'm saying that, once again, just tying this into this recent hiring of this new interim chief. The arrogance is doing the same thing over and over again and not learning from it. But that's also the ignorance, right? At what point are you going to learn from your mistakes? I mean, in a lot of ways, Manheimer is, she presents the same challenges as Kirkpatrick. It's the same thing. Like, does she not see that? What's, you know, is there something else at play? She's not really transparent in terms of sharing why she make her decisions. So, but we look at the record is clear. And not just on this issue, but pretty much every vital issue that has impacted the city under her quote unquote leadership or lack thereof.
And I have to say one thing else too. Well, is just a point of information that came out the wrong way. May 14, 2019. Then in 2010, I made an April Fool joke saying she was going to decide to run it, and it scared the heck out of Landry Chermitola among other people. And I know that because I ran into him at the Colombo Club when I was at dinner with then Oakland City Attorney John Russo and a mutual group of friends. And I say all that because Schaaf I thought we were going to get is not the Mayor Schaaf that is active. And I said that to her privately. I've said that before, and I'm reiterating it. But I'm also taking responsibility for the fact that I fervently pushed her when no one else thought that was, you know, something that was going to happen. But everyone thought that, hey, you know what, Libby would do a great job because she had a ton of friends in Oakland that would get behind her. And the first time she ran, it was friends of Libby. You know, it was myself, a ton of people that go back to Skyline High School. We expected a different Mayor Schaaf. And I'm not going to drop words from anybody else that Libby and I know, but I will say a lot of people are disappointed. I mean, it's not, we expected her to represent the best of Oakland and not the worst of our history. And to my tearful dismay, consistently, she's done that. And I keep hoping for this, you know, nightmare to be over and maybe, you know, comes out to be a different person. And I personally know she's upset with me because a number of people have told me she's really mad at you. She can call me, you know. But there's a lot of things we talked about privately that she's doing the opposite of what I said she should not do when we talked about it way back in the turn of the second decade of the 21st century. And I just have to say candidly, as an African-American person, as a man, I don't expect, who's grown up the way I did and picked out his friends, I don't expect my friends to be the instruments of the social destruction of a people. Even unintentionally. I expect them to go out, correct it, marshal their friends together and say, you know what, I need your help. I did something wrong. How can I fix it? And then move forward. You know, that's what I expect.
That's right. No, I appreciate that. I do want to share something with you because I think it's very important for your viewers, just to have a quick understanding of how I show up. So, you know, in my role, my official title is Director of Community and Political Engagement. So essentially what I do is connect residents, specifically those who are directly impacted by a certain issue. I bring them in close proximity with our decision makers to come to a healthy resolution. So in other words, the way I show up is, you know, there's a saying, we can agree to disagree. You know, I've never personally attacked anyone in office. I never vilified them. I keep my critiques always to the issue. And during the course of my career doing this now nearly 8 years, I've been blessed to meet a lot of these folks in office. And for the most part, a lot of them are really good people. I mean, we're all flawed, right? And I'm saying this for a reason, because when it comes to Libby, probably in my recent history, and I'm talking about outside of my work in activism, but just someone that's born and raised in Oakland, she has clearly been the most polarizing person I've ever run across. I've had a number of conversations with her on the record, off the record, one-on-one conversations. Similar to you, when she first ran, I voted for her, and I was excited because I felt, okay, here's someone born in Oakland. Here is someone who, at that time in 2014, was a great year in terms of organizing, because there were so many ballot measures that was geared toward helping people. And I really believe that she was the person who's going to take that further. But I do recall a month later, I began to have some reservations. This is before she got into office, but I was wondering, were we deceived, so to speak? And what began to unravel quickly within the next 6 months, actually before the first 6 months, I want to start with the first thing that happened. So there were a number of Black women who were marching around Say Her Name because, the number of Black women who also been harmed by the police wasn't being lifted up.
Right.
And I thought, and I even shared this with Libby personally, I thought this was a wonderful opportunity for her as a woman to show up in solidarity with the Black women who were marching, right? And saying, police was ordered to disperse that march, and she, the mayor, made a decision to ban nighttime protests. And I'm thinking, everyone from Oakland,
how the mayor, we expected her to march and then got cut off, and then can you fill in that area?
Yes. So here it is, and this is like literally within 60 days of her being in office. There were an organized effort of Black women marching in Oakland around the number of Black women who were being brutalized by the police, but their names were not being lifted up. So I thought, as an individual, that was a perfect opportunity for our mayor, as a woman, to join in solidarity with these Black women, right? To speak out against the violence that women have been experiencing. That did not happen. What ended up happening was the police was called, and those women in particular were ordered to disperse. Several of them was arrested, including someone I know who's on the planning commission. And then the mayor, afterwards, made an effort to try to ban nighttime marches, right? Nighttime protests. And it was shocking because, as she shared that she's from Oakland, that is part of the fabric of who Oakland is, right? We rally around social justice or social injustice, right? And we ensure equality and equity for everyone. So right then and there began for me the process of a number of missed opportunities, a number of mishaps. And I do want to be very clear in this. I've been interviewed by different folks in the media, and more often than not, the same question will come up. Do I think or believe that Libby is racist? I've never made that assertion publicly. I do believe that people can make decisions that have racial implications. That's very real and true. But I was like, to really go to a place and say, do I think she's racist? I wasn't willing to make that leap. And I want to be clear, this is like a couple years ago, right? Including being, interviewed with her in the same publication. One of the things I pointed out was, by her being an upper middle class, middle-aged white woman from the hills, I would share with people, Oakland is not just one city. It's probably like 6 or 7 different Oaklands, right? So there are some inherent challenges baked into this process. And I think that put her, in a lot of ways, at a disadvantage. But when we continue to just, and I think this is important because it's so sad, I just felt like there were just so many opportunities that Libby could have taken advantage of. I even wrap up on this. I even made myself available as someone that's on the ground, right? Someone that's, quote unquote, respected for the work that I do. I was willing to, be her eyes and ears on the ground in East Oakland in terms to help her stay aware of what's happening, right? I'm not saying that she has to listen to me. I'm just one person. My ego is not that big. But, it's always come down to who and what is informing the decision-making processes, right?
Yeah, I thought.
And that's what.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll go in at the end of the day. Like, it goes back to my earlier comment. Arrogance and ignorance.
And I think for me, it's like I I met her. I met her through her parents in 1991 after Oakland Strain Division. And I met her parents. They were then not her parents. They were dating, Bob and Barbara, at the Golden Bear, and we all hit it off. But it took me about a year to get to know her. And I remember she and I bonded through walking the precinct for Don Smith. So the gentleman was running for Oakland School, or black, and don't know what happened to him. He just disappeared off the face of the earth, and we both talked about it for years and tried to find him. But Libby's parents, who are my godparents, if you ever had an occasion to know them, they don't reflect what we're talking about. Bob can walk into Eli's Mile High Club and he dances with every sister in the room and just command the place. And yet he's one of the top 400 super lawyers in California. If there's a model of a person who really represents and reflects Oakland, it's Bob Schaaf. He's a personal injury attorney. And I'm honored to have him. Well, so it is deeply more hurtful because of that. And her mother, Barbara Schaaf, was the volunteer coordinator for the Oakland Symphony. And these are folks, John, if you got to know them, you'd never associate them with anything they were talking about like that at all. And so this is something with them I don't talk about for reasons, because I love them very much. All right. But I reached the decision a few months ago that the city had gone a bit too far, and that I had to break some confidences in order to do my part to really help right this ship. And it hurts me to my heart that it has to be with somebody who I have this kind of relationship with, but I do so in the constant hope that she stops and turns it around, because that I believe she can do it. But more important, we have to do it. If we're going to save any semblance of the Oakland we were, rather than look like more South than the South, if you will, we have to. It bothers me that, I don't want to go on because it's your platform, but I just want to get that out there.
No, I appreciate that. I think that's really a good place as far as moving forward. Like, one thing about me, I own it. I have many flaws. If I can say that I have a good flaw, right, then it would be this. I've been called an eternal optimist. I believe in hope and faith. Absent of that, what's the point of me getting out of bed each morning? And I said that to say this. There's still, 2+ years remaining on Libby's term. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why I really haven't spent a lot of time really necessarily critiquing her is because I still hold out hope that we as a city can come together and address a lot of these vital issues that's impacting the people today. Because, I always say with people, whether you like her or not, she's there, right? What can we do? And, that's what's so disappointing about this recent hire, because I shared with her, I was at the press conference when they announced that the chief was fired. And I told her I thought that was a good thing, and I feel like, that was a place for her to be mindful of just the long history related to OPD, and to, above all, just really, from a place of humility. Because I think leadership isn't about saying you know all the answers, as much as being in a place to where you can trust the people around you. The people of Oakland is one of the most educated people on the planet. Mm-hmm. And to be once again disappointed with this seemingly sudden decision to once again bring in another outside person. It wasn't a matter of life and death to make the decision right then and there.
Right.
And even on an interim basis, right, Zenny, mm-hmm. It still could have, you could have promoted Armstrong.
Right.
He was perfect for the interim. Even if you feel like long term, that's not him, in the interim, right? Let us make sure we're taking all the proper steps, exercising due diligence to use your words, to right this ship. Mm-hmm. Because this ship has sailed off. It's been a muck for the last 17 years and counting.
Yep.
And it's hard to maintain that sense of hope when these decisions are continuously made. And to your point of sharing what John Burry shared, that although the article quoted him as being advised on that, he wasn't.
No, and it came from a city official they didn't identify, and not only that, they didn't even bother to fact check it at all.
Right.
Hey,
Yeah.
how are we doing on time? Because I've had you for almost an hour, and I don't want to hog your time too much. I'm blessed to have you.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you reminded me. I got a few minutes. You know, OUSD not only they closed, but they extended the closure, so I have to make sure I, allocate time to take my youngest son out to exercise, the young screen, because if not, he gonna do it inside the house.
Well, I'll tell you what, I want to thank you. I want to take this time. Thank you very much for being on. Come back again, and we'll do this again, and keep tabs. And I want to thank you for your service to Oakland. You are truly a treasure to a lot of people, and just stay safe and healthy out there, man. Please.
Oh, absolutely. And you as well, and to your viewers. I mean, please, take the time to not only shelter in place, but use this time to really, bond, or in some cases, even rebond with family members and loved ones. A lot of us are busy and working on those relationships. We really need energy moving.
Talk to you later, man. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to turn off the live stream. Don't go anywhere.
You got it.
Okay. Hey, thanks, everybody. We'll be back to talk about the Raiders situation in a few minutes.